Even after you've been selling it for a couple of months, don't you still get a thrill out of the fact that you're selling the best-looking car in its field? Plymouth makes Chevy look like a blunt-nosed barge. Still, you wouldn't volunteer that comment to a prospect. You wouldn't start out comparing with Chevrolet, because you wouldn't want to make a Plymouth prospect start thinking about another car. But there's always the prospect who starts talking Chevrolet. He owns one, or he's read some Chevrolet advertising that interests him. Then you can compare with pleasure. That's what this film is about. Selling a Plymouth Belvedere to a man who's interested in a Chevrolet Bel Air. Of course, the film will cover a lot more ground than you would ever cover with any one prospect. But to get the complete story on Chevrolet, we'll see salesman Fred Crane answer a lot of typical questions from prospect George Brenner. And we'll see how he uses the questions as a springboard to positive Plymouth selling. Let's listen.
It's a 52 Chevrolet that I own now. As a matter of fact, I just stopped in on my way to the Chevrolet dealers.
I'm certainly glad you decided to take a look at this great all-new Plymouth, Mr. Brenner. Plymouth is the one big car in the lowest price field. The car that's all new from tires to top. The styling that has that forward look motion, even while standing still. It's eager and graceful.
Yeah, it's good looking, all right. Of course, the Chevrolet is all new, too.
Yes, at least the look is new for Chevrolet. But because its styling is squeezed down from a bigger car, it lacks the fresh, agile look of the all-new Plymouth. As you can see for yourself, Plymouth looks longer because it is longer, by over 8 inches. Plymouth looks wider and lower because it is wider and lower. It is the big car in the lowest price field.
Well, I guess there has to be a good reason for the big look.
You're so right. Plymouth is styled to take advantage of its size. Every line adds to its long, low look of motion. The massive yet beautiful appearance head-on is the result of careful blending of all the elements. Hood, fenders, grille, bumper, lights. Notice how the angle of the front fenders emphasizes the dramatic forward thrusting look, a look that's sure to be copied by others. You get tomorrow's styling in Plymouth today, Mr. Brenner, as you can see.
Did you notice how Crane recognized the prospect's comment on Chevrolet styling by pointing out that Plymouth is longer, lower, and wider? That's a 1-2-3 punch. And he went from there to a strong, positive talk on Plymouth styling. But now he's about to run into another Chevrolet hurdle, as his prospect says.
Doesn't look like you have a wraparound windshield like Chevrolet. How come?
You're right. This is not like Chevrolet's. This is a full wraparound. You see, Plymouth's new full-view windshield is swept back at the top as well as the bottom. It gives you more visibility at eye level, where you want it. Look, here's a quick way to see the difference. Try holding your hands straight up like this. Now, that's like the straight up and down Chevrolet corner posts. Notice those blind spots at eye level? Your hands? Now, pull your hands straight back like this. See the difference? No blind spots. That's Plymouth's new full-view windshield with the swept-back pillars. You get rid of that blind spot at the top. Of course, that natural streamlined slant to the windshield adds to the beauty of Plymouth's slim profile roofline, too. It's simply more evidence of the unified styling. Incidentally, speaking of visibility, the Plymouth windshield wipers are electrically operated, which means they won't slow down or stop, even when the engine is pulling hard. Did you ever have that happen when you were passing?
Yeah, and it's no fun. But I heard that Chevy has electric wipers this year.
You're right about that, Mr. Brenner, but you have to pay extra for them on Chevrolet. They're standard equipment on all Plymouth models.
Well, that's interesting. But one thing I know, Chevrolet has a pretty big trunk. How does Plymouth's compare with it?
The Plymouth luggage compartment has considerably more width, depth, and height. And here's something you'll like. No waste space. Even the gas filler pipe has been moved out of the way, behind the spare tire. And Plymouth's torsion bar hinging takes up less space. It doesn't stick out where it can scuff your luggage either. Plymouth always keeps the convenience and comfort of the customer in mind, too. Step around here, I'd like to show you what I mean. See how easily and comfortably you can get in? That's because Plymouth door openings are higher, and the doors themselves swing wider.
You mean this doorway is wider than Chevy's?
Absolutely. That's one of the advantages you get from a bigger car. And when you sit in Plymouth's chair-height seats, you find real living room comfort. You don't have to sit with your legs uncomfortably jackknifed as you would with lower seats. Notice how relaxing that back seat feels.
Feels pretty good. Say, I read where Chevy has foam rubber standard in the Bel Air this year. How about this car?
Foam rubber is an optional choice on Plymouth, Mr. Brenner, because of the real comfort that is built into Plymouth seats. Would you step out for a moment and let me show you what I mean? There. The folks at Plymouth went a lot deeper for your comfort. This car has full coil spring construction in the seats and in the seat backs, too. That's how the finest furniture is built. Put foam rubber on top of that, and you've got luxury that Chevrolet just can't match. Yes, sir, when it comes to riding comfort, well, I have a lot of customers who say they buy Plymouths for that benefit alone. Handling ease and roadability are two more reasons for Plymouth's growing popularity. For instance, the 1955 Plymouth has added to its already great stability by widening its front tread. That wide base in front means she'll ride better and handle easier, too.
Does Plymouth have ball joints in the front end?
No, Plymouth has a more expensive type front suspension. We use non-parallel control arms. They don't require servicing, and they give better cornering. They make Plymouth as sure-footed as a cat. And Plymouth's wider splay-mounted rear springs give more firm control over any tendency to sway or bounce on rough roads. And finally, there's the exclusive Plymouth feature that makes the Plymouth ride even better than some of the higher-priced cars. What I'm referring to, of course, is Plymouth's Auraflow shock absorbers. They control your comfort because they're self-adjusting. Whether the bump is small, medium, or large, they give you exactly the right amount of shock absorber action. Matter of fact, tests show that Plymouth center-mounted Auraflows can handle 2.5 times more road shocks than ordinary shock absorbers can.
That much, huh? Sounds pretty good.
I'd like to take you out for a ride in a new Plymouth, Mr. Brenner. Frankly, if you're familiar with the 55 Chevrolets, I think you'll be amazed at how much more comfortably you ride in a Plymouth. Actually, your 52 may ride better than a 55 Chevrolet. Your car has an anti-sway bar. But to cut costs, Chevrolet has eliminated the anti-sway bar in the 1955 cars, which means they try to control sway by putting in stiffer springs than before. The result is a hard ride, which the ball joints you mentioned simply cannot compensate for. Now, Plymouth does have an anti-sway bar, which allows us to use extra soft springs for comfort. We give those springs positive control with the Auraflow shocks I mentioned. Or to put it another way, Mr. Brenner, replacing standard kingpins with ball joints is just a manufacturing feature. But eliminating the anti-sway bar concerns the driver because it affects his comfort and the control he has over the car on turns. But what do you say we take a Plymouth out now, Mr. Brenner, so you can experience Plymouth's riding and handling ease for yourself?
Well, first I'd like to find out something about your engine. Now, Chevrolet's new V8 has a lot of horses, 162, I think, with a compression ratio of 8-to-1.
You're right, Mr. Brenner, but I think Plymouth goes them one better with the new high-fire V8. It has 167 horsepower with a compression ratio of 7.6-to-1. There's more than a horsepower advantage to that statement, as I'll explain. Mr. Brenner, there's a big advantage to you in the fact that Plymouth delivers its higher horsepower at a lower compression ratio. It's simply this. Your Plymouth delivers its full rated horsepower on non-premium fuel.
You mean with Chevrolet you have to use premium fuel?
Well, the Chevrolet owner's manual doesn't say it in so many words. What it says is that use of premium gasoline will result in less spark wrap. They add that normal spark wrap is not harmful. But believe me, engine ping just isn't normal in a high-fire V8. And harmful or not, everyone agrees that it's plenty annoying. We're pretty proud that a Plymouth delivers more horsepower without making you pay a penalty at the gas pump.
But why did Chevrolet raise its compression ratio so high?
Well, raising the compression ratio is one way of squeezing a few more horsepower out of an engine. Of course, there's another way of getting more horsepower from an engine, a way that's not as economical for the manufacturer, but certainly more economical for the car owner, and that's to build the kind of engine which gives more power through more efficient operation. When you come right down to it, that's the difference between the two engines, a difference in basic design. For instance, only Plymouth's high-fire engine has polysphere combustion chambers with no corners where carbon can accumulate. Carbon steals power and is another cause of engine ping. Then Plymouth has power-poised valves. The intake and exhaust valves are opposite each other. The intake manifold is on the same side as the intake valves. The exhaust manifold is on the same side as the exhaust valves. It's an advanced design for easy breathing. And easier breathing simply means more efficient use of the fuel and air mixture. For you, it means more horsepower, better economy, and premium performance on regular fuel. That's typical of the engineering quality Plymouth is famous for.
That's how Crane sells the high-fire Plymouth. Now let's suppose that you as a salesman want to sell a Plymouth equipped with a PowerFlow 117 engine. What would you talk about to a Chevrolet owner? First off, you can talk about all the Plymouth superiorities Crane has brought out in selling the high-fire, except the engine. There's no other difference between a PowerFlow Plymouth and the same model with a high-fire engine. It has the same beauty advantage on the outside, the same smart styling advantages on the inside, and exactly the same saleable dimensions which make it the biggest car inside and out in the lowest price field. Now, a Chevrolet-minded prospect might feel that Chevrolet has a horsepower advantage with their advertised ratings of 123 and 136. But those figures don't pay off in owner satisfaction like the facts do. To begin with, Chevrolet's 136 horsepower engine is available only with Power Glide. And strangely enough, it has exactly the same bore and stroke, the same compression ratio as its 123 horsepower twin. Against these two high-strung sixes, Plymouth offers the most powerful and most dependable L-head engine in its history, the PowerFlow 117. The first selling benefit it has is right in its basic design. Since engine experts are agreed that the less complicated L-head design with its fewer, more rugged parts, gives longer, trouble-free operation than the valve and head type like Chevrolet's. The PowerFlow 117 has chrome-sealed action with its extra-hard chrome-plated top rings. It guarantees long valve life with exhaust valve seat inserts, and only Plymouth has an oil bath-type air cleaner and oil filter as standard equipment. And as indications of quality engineering, the PowerFlow 117 has a chain-driven camshaft, rotary-type oil pump, resistor-type spark plugs, and floating-power-type engine mountings. These are the facts that can be given the prospect. And the last fact he gets himself when he gets behind the wheel and feels the get-up and go of the smooth and quiet-running PowerFlow 117. Now, suppose your Chevrolet-minded prospect asks why Chevy has a 12-volt ignition system while Plymouth has a 6-volt system. Again, it's a matter of laying out the facts. Fact number one, the toughest test of an electrical system is this: does it start the engine easily and instantly? Fact number two, Plymouth engines start every time at the first flick of the key, and that holds true for both the high-fire and the PowerFlow 117. So a 12-volt system wouldn't help a Plymouth owner. It would simply give him the burden of higher replacement costs and the burden of a 6-cell battery that servicemen may fail to check. We'll gladly leave those burdens for Chevrolet salesmen to explain. To get back to Crane, After his story on the engine, he leads his prospect behind the wheel and begins talking about additional features that add to Plymouth's ease of handling.
Naturally, Plymouth's better engine performance means greater ease of handling for you, Mr. Brenner. But there are a lot of other features that make Plymouth the easiest handling car on the road. Take Power Flight, Plymouth's unmatched, fully automatic transmission. The first thing about it that I know you'll appreciate is the flight control lever mounted on the instrument panel. You see, Mr. Brenner, with Power Flight, you hardly use the selector lever any more than you do the ignition key. So we've put it up with the ignition key where it belongs. A flick of your finger and you're off. There's modern driving at its best.
You've got Power Flight and Chevrolet has Power Glide. They sound almost alike. Are they?
Well, sir, they're both fully automatic transmissions, but when you've driven a Plymouth with Power Flight, you'll know the difference. These figures tell the efficiency story in a nutshell. Power Flight multiplies engine torque, or go power, 4.47 times in drive range. Chevrolet's Power Glide multiplies its engine torque only 3.82 times. Plymouth's terrific takeoff is partially due to the outstanding efficiency of Power Flight. Power Flight is easier to use, too. First, it has no park position. It doesn't need one because Plymouth's exclusive and powerful independent parking brake does the job. Here's another feature for easier driving. Plymouth Power Steering works for you full time, from the moment you start the engine until you stop it, so that its feel is always the same.
I suppose Chevrolet is about the same.
Not quite. Chevrolet's power steering cuts in only after the driver has applied several pounds of pressure on the steering wheel, which makes for a confusing on and off feeling. Frankly, it's part-time, although it costs just about the same as Plymouth's full-time steering. Now, something else which makes for easier handling as well as a feeling of security is Plymouth's full safety power brakes. Added to Plymouth's regular Safeguard hydraulic brakes, they provide the easiest, surest, and safest braking.
Say, Chevy's power brake pedal is a lot lower than yours. It ought to be easier to use.
There's no trouble swinging either your left foot or your right over to this wide pedal. Just try it.
Yeah, that's easy enough.
And in a Plymouth, you'll still have full reserve pedal travel, even with the engine turned off. That's mighty important to you if the power should ever cut out. Another safety feature you'll want for your family is Plymouth's exclusive safety rim wheels. In case of a flat, those rims hold the tire on the wheel so you can come to a safe stop. With tubeless tires, that's the safest tire and wheel team on the road.
That's a sample of how Fred Crane sells the Plymouth against Chevrolet all the way through in terms of greater benefits for the customer. Why not try handling comparison questions from a Chevrolet-minded prospect the way Fred Crane did? Review this film occasionally and make some of Fred's selling points yours. Then prove your points with a demonstration. Don't forget, a good demonstration builds desire to own a Plymouth. It will lead to the closing room with your prospect in a closing frame of mind. And that, to sum it up, is the way to good selling in 1955.